Keiser. Hey! It's so hot in here, a little close. I think I can take my jacket off. But you know, I think I need a little slutty strip music. I want you to help me with that. We've got a problem.
I can't.
The problem is down there in the city of London. Alright, we've got basically an entrenched oligopoly, a kleptocracy, a bunch of city bankers that are career psychotics. They're wielding weapons of mass financial destruction, and they're imposing immorally and illegally austerity measures. Now, these austerity measures completely concocted out of their sphinx bullshit. I mean, just look at this deal with Richard Branson, okay? He's got blonde hair and shiny teeth. So what the fuck? We're gonna give him a $500 million credit to take over Northern Rock. Where's that money coming from? From your ass! Yeah! Now, Mervyn King, Sir Mervyn King, he's imposing something called quantitative easing. What is quantitative easing? It's basically a forced redistribution of money from savers, from workers, from people on pensions, from people who have fixed incomes, to the speculators. He's taking what should be 4%, 5% interest rates on your savings. He's saying you only get 0.5% because we've got to make sure these speculators don't go out of business. Because we want their cost of funds to be zero. And every time they make a mistake, we're going to bail them out. Like fucking Richard Branson with a $500 million gift. And it comes out of your ass with austerity measures that you had nothing to do with in imposing to begin with. That's unconscionable. Cameron, STFU. I like looking at the newspaper, basically. You just get an idea exactly. It's right there in the paper. It doesn't require anything but have your eyes open to see this broad, the heist happening in broad daylight. I mean, here it is. The Bank of England's talking about quantitative easing. It's completely an absurd notion. It's a theory of a bank that they can somehow impose their model on an economy. But by the way, they can't predict how that model is going to work. Mervyn King himself, when asked, will there be another crisis, said, I can't even predict tomorrow. But your entire model is based on your ability to predict. What the fuck? Now, of course, there is a ray of sunshine. This was in the paper here in the UK. The austerity sandwich. It turns out there's a recipe from 1861, 2 slices of bread surrounding a slice of toast. Scientists in the UK say it's by far the cheapest lunch. The toast is spread with butter, salt, and pepper and wedged between 2 pieces of bread. It's the most economic lunch we've ever seen in 150 years. Once again, these austerity measures are completely unnecessary. They were the result of complete flagrancy and corruption in the banking sector. When is this government going to arrest some of these fucking guys? You know, in Iceland, we were in Iceland doing a film in Reykjavik on the collapse of the Icelandic economy, the Icelandic krona. We were there a year before it collapsed. We told them point blank, you know, this whole thing's going to blow up in a year. Sure enough, it blows up. there's an Interpol warrant out for the arrest of Schwing, Schwang, Schwing, Deuter, Ein Deuter, for fraud, but guess where they're hiding out? Guess where who's giving them safe harbor? London! They're in Chelsea! We're hanging out with Abramovich! So this place, this London, this city of London is really the global capital of fraud and hedge fund activity. You know, the Bernie Madoff scandal come right through London. Nobody cared about that. You know, there's a joke Woody Allen used to tell. He said, he goes to his brother, he goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, my brother thinks he's a chicken." Doctor says, "Here, give me these pills." He says, "You don't understand, we need the eggs." This is the UK economy. If you took fraud out of the system, you've got nothing but toast sandwiches. Fraud is the GDP. They say the banking sector is 10, 20% of GDP. We can't impose the Tobin tax because it would destroy the GDP of our country, because we must have these bankers continuing what they're doing, even though what they're doing is fraud. We need them to continue because it's giving all these jobs to the citizens, so we can't impose the Tobin tax. Let me tell you something. Over there in the United States of America, they just busted a bank, Bank of America. It turns out that for every transaction on their multi-trillion-dollar pension custodian business, they've been stealing 3/10 of the penny for 30 years, and guess what? Nobody noticed. Nobody noticed. So who's going to notice the Tobin tax? None of these bankers. You could take a Tobin. You know, I go to this restaurant over there in Soho for years, and I've looked at this thing on the table. It says every meal we charge you £1 for feeding the homeless. I've never looked at that for 5 years. Suddenly I looked at it, I'm like, holy shit, I never noticed it. Nobody would notice a Tobin tax in the banking sector. It's a complete non-starter. If it's a transaction, it should be taxed, right? Oh, we pay taxes and we do transactions. We pay back taxes. It's a tax, so nobody would notice. So the argument that, oh, here's the other here. Oh, in the banking sector, you know, if we were to force the mark-to-market of all their bad assets and collapse the banks, they would go out of business and our economy would go into the total nightmarish long night of financial Armageddon. But that never has happened. When all these countries have had to write off all their shit debt, within 3 or 4 years they're selling bonds again. Iceland is selling bonds again. Their rating is going up, they're not going down. Argentina has sold bonds again. You know, there's the insatiable banking maw that needs to be fed with high-yield sovereign shit. Doesn't matter if you went bankrupt last year, they'll buy your sovereign shit this year because they're insatiable and they're psychotic. You know, they're chase yield down to the bitter hellhole, and we see that happening all the time. So that's another lie that unfortunately in this country the media is kind of weak, I must say. You know, like on the BBC last year, Robert Preston, I was on his show for a Christmas interview, told them all about what was going on at JP Morgan. They didn't run it on the BBC. And he told me that, well, we don't like banker bashing. Right? Now on Channel 4, a couple of months ago on 10 O'Clock Live, I was on their show trying to discuss the problem and how to solve it. I came up with my solution: hang the bankers. 1790, John Locke said, when the social contract is broken, the people must revolt. Yeah. Now that went on for a few years, but the fucking bankers wouldn't leave, so they invented the guillotine. Yes. 1793, of course, he started what's called the Reign of Terror, but hell, you gotta start somewhere. Now here's something else you read in the paper, which is all about what's currently happening. Great headline: banks are playing war games. It turns out that this is also happening in the Pentagon in the United States, because they realize derivatives and financial products are now weaponized. And in the Pentagon they had a war game simulation where they invited bankers and generals from the Army, Navy, Air Force to come in and stage a war game operation for a week, 2 weeks, and the only weapon that they had were financial weapons. And they're all openly discussing this, and they're getting ready for the financial war of this decade and the next decade. This is where the wars are going to be fought. All of these derivative contracts that are floating in the system, not only are they dangerously imposing austerity measures on you and me and everyone else needlessly, but they're also set to use these as financial weapons. Look what they did to Greece. Greece was going to be bailed out for 100 billion. They printed 500 billion in credit default swaps. They sold those into the Greek market and they totally destroyed the economy of Greece. Same thing in Italy. Same thing in Ireland. Poor Ireland. Anglo-Irish fucking bank, Sean Fitzpatrick, okay? If you look up terrorist in Wikipedia, there should be a picture of Sean Fitzpatrick. Right? He's a sociopath. He's a psychotic. The Anglo-Irish bank, he said when they caught him stealing billions, that, well, you know, take it out of the poor's ass. That's what they're there for. I paraphrase. And this is, just last week, the Irish government, which is now firmly in the grasp of the IMF Troika, they made a payment of 750 euros on a bond, Anglo-Irish, that was unsecured. Two things. Number one, the bank doesn't exist anymore. And number two, what about the word unsecured? Don't you understand? It's unsecured. Yeah. If you loan money, it's unsecured. Don't expect it back, you fucking jackass. Yeah. Why did the Irish government do that? It comes right out of the Irish people now are in dire straits. You know, they're having big problems. You know, the situation in Ireland, they're reclassifying bread in different categories now and saying this is subsidized, this isn't subsidized. It's coming here as well. The wonks and the technocrats and the bankers, what they call technocrats, it's just a way of avoiding saying banker. That was quick, wasn't it? Oh, the technocrats in Italy and in Greece, they're not technocrats, they're fucking bankers. They're all tied in with Goldman Sachs. They all have a history with Goldman Sachs. They all deal with the central banks. They all deal with the IMF. They're all doing the exact same shit. The European Financial Security Fund is just a $5 trillion slush fund that they're going to try to roll a lot of shit debt into a new piece of shit. And they're going to extend that out for another 20 years, and to pay the interest, they're going to impose more austerity measures. And it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. There are no solutions that they're putting forward. That's not sustainable in any sense of the word. It's complete financial fraud. And this is being played out all over the world. And of course you see a reaction. You see a reaction in these Occupy movements, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy London Stock Exchange, Occupy this, Occupy that. And there's a global insurrection against these banking occupying forces. And it's getting stronger and it's getting more animated. And this is only going in one direction because they don't have any solution that makes any sense. And the only solution that makes any sense is you've got to basically write these debts down to what they're worth, which is zero. There's got to be a write-down of these debts. That means these banks have got to be crushed. You don't force the taxpayer to take a £500 million loss from their Virgin Rock that they were promised they were going to make money on, give it a gift to Richard Branson because he's got blonde hair and shiny teeth, and say, well, you know how to build a brand. This must work for you. Have at it. Okay? In 3 or 4 years, he's going to take it public, pocket $1 billion or so euros down in Necker, and having freaking that star from Titanic put out forest fires again. So, what's happening with the central banks? You know, the central banks for 30 years were selling their gold. They're selling their gold because they bought into this idea that you could create this perpetual Ponzi scheme built on ever-floating, ever more quantities of fine paper and building that and using the rise in paper as the collateral to issue more paper, and then using the rise of that paper as collateral to issue more paper. And of course, the GDP ostensibly is going up, but the debt pile is going up, you know, geometrically bigger until such time as in 2007 when you can't pay the interest on the debt anymore. Now you're deleveraging, and their solution is to create more debt. And they want to create more facilities for debt. They want to create greater banking consortium of all these banks combining all their debts. And you know who in Europe is licking their chops at this? Germany, of course. Doesn't that make sense? It's all going to end up going through Berlin. I mean, they are benefiting wildly from the cheap euro because they have a huge export market. They're going to benefit wildly from the collapse because they're going to be managing it through their banking system and through Berlin. So they're really playing both sides of this. They totally understand the game. They've got 3,000 tons of gold. Gold is what's going to make the winners and losers of this. Germany's got 3,000 tons of gold. The UK has got 300. They had 600, but then Gordon Brown sold 300. Considered to be the worst trade of the century. Okay, Alan Greenspan's friend, the guy who got Alan Greenspan knighted. Gordon Brown sold half of your gold. You're down to 300 tons. Okay? Germany's got 3,000 tons. And who's got, the gold is really a major factor going forward, because when they end up having to re-architect this whole system, because it's heading totally to the gutter, you're going to have to value all these broken fiat currencies against something, and that something is going to be gold. And I'll give you an example of exactly what I mean. First, I want to do my impression of the central banker. There we go. Yeah, I started doing this a couple of years ago, and of course the bubbles are getting bigger, and I had a bigger bubble machine, but they stopped me at integration with that. They stopped me at the airport because there was too much liquid. The liquid was bigger than this. It was more than 107 milliliters or whatever. Yeah. And that, of course, could be dangerous terrorist stuff. All that liquid, all those soap bubbles, could really damage somebody. So clearly at the airport they know something more about economics than they do at the Bank of England. So anyway, the central banks are buying gold, and I'll give you an example. I was just actually at an event here in London. We're talking about currencies, and I'm kind of smiling because a couple of people here today, so they'll kind of get where I'm coming from on this, because I'm basically stealing it from somebody else's presentation. But nevertheless, you see, there's a difference between a currency and money. Okay? Now, I had a real good example of this on the cab ride coming here this evening. We got out of the cab, and we gave the fella, the cab driver, this £5 Scottish money.
He didn't know.
No. Okay, he said, no, I don't take that, mate. Wait 1 second. It's Scotland. It's the United Kingdom, right?
No.
United Kingdom, aren't you all together with Scotland? He said, no, we don't take the Scottish money here. We don't take the Scottish money. So I said, basically, I thought he was putting me on, and I started cursing at him, as I do. Yeah, and calling him various, inappropriate names, various adjectives, I should. And he kind of smiled at me like, yeah, okay, buddy, maybe you need to learn some things still. So I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it turns out that, in fact, the Scottish pounds, they are not accepted here in England. And unless both parties agree to that exchange. You need both parties have to agree to it. You see, that's a currency. It's only valuable if both parties agree to it. If he could have said, yes, I accept your £5, and we could have transacted, and that's a currency. But it's not money. You see, if this was gold or silver, we wouldn't be having that debate. Okay, because it's had purchasing power for 5,000 years. If nobody debates real gold, real silver, that it's really money. And it has held purchasing power over the test of time. But this is currency. But this is a problem with all fiat money. All fiat money in the world, since the beginning of money in history, the average lifespan is about 47 years, and every single one has had the end result being a valuation to zero. 100%. They've all gone to zero. The euro's going to zero. The dollar's going to zero. This is going to zero. And it's all happening right now, and of course the only way to break out of this will be to reconfigure the global economy. They did it at Bretton Woods, and they're going to have to do it against gold, and the price of gold is going to have to be revalued at a much higher price. There's only 160,000 tons of gold in the world. It fills 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools, or it's a cubic tennis court of gold, that's it. And at the current valuations, given the $600 trillion of derivatives, you discount for Civil War, riots, poll tax riots, a little this, a little that. And you end up with, you got to clear this shit out at upwards of $7,000, $8,000 an ounce. $7,000, $8,000 an ounce, my friends. Okay, and you do, I figure silver is going to be trading at a 20 to 1, ratio to that. And you understand why central banks, according to this headline, central banks are now the biggest gold rush in 40 years. Central banks are now aggressively buying gold. They're doing the opposite of what Gordon Brown thought you should do. They're now aggressively buying gold. Russia's buying gold every month. China's buying gold. India's buying gold. Because they all realize that this is all going to end up with gold and silver and how that's going to be revalued. And so this is what's happening. And this is what I don't think there's enough communication about this, because especially in the UK, there's this notion that by continuing the status quo, that there's going to be austerity measures, there's going to be a policy adjustment, there's going to be a committee meeting, there's going to be some political solution. But unless you get rid of the fraud, you're not going to get anywhere with this. And you're not getting rid of the debt, you're not going to get anywhere with this. You know, somebody asked me before, they said, is this inflation or deflation? Is it stagflation? Is it biflation? That's, you're asking a macroeconomic question for a theft. You know, if somebody steals your wallet, you say, well, gee, is that inflation? Right? You know, is it inflation? Is it deflation? Gee, I'm not sure. You know, of course, it's just you got to deal with the threats. Now, when I'm doing my show, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want to point out at this stage of the program that you watch our show and you watch our films. They're all written, directed, and essentially produced by Stacey Herbert. Big round of applause! Okay, that was a little too big. That's not very well.
Who's winning on Twitter now?
If you notice the comments on YouTube, you know, within 13 minutes we'll be talking about, yeah, and then, you know, this quantitative easing it can't be imposed, it's financial repression, and, you know, you've got a situation with Cameron, and he's trying to appease the Germans, and it's an arbitrage between the political establishment. And the first comment is, Stacey's hair looks great.
Everyone wants to turn up.
Right, you know.
She's more beautiful in real life than she's on the telly.
She's speeding me. On Twitter Wars, we have a big competition there. We got a comfortable lead, but she's good. So people want to know, is there any hope in the situation? What do we do? Is there any hope? And no, there's no hope. You want to just top yourself. That's not horrible. Oh, by the way, you know, the videos that we make some videos, and have you ever seen this video from the zombie banquet death squad? So if you do a search for zombie banquet death squad, you'll see some excellent videos from that group. And we met online, and it's we're going to do some stuff, collaborations going forward. But so the question is there any hope? What are we dealing with? What is the nature of the beast? You know, who is this enemy? Why do they keep coming at us? The zombies. You know, you try to kill them.